Let's be real about something that Formula One fans have been dancing around for years now. Lance Stroll is one of the most debated drivers on the grid, and it's time to have an honest, data-driven conversation about whether he actually deserves his seat going into 2026. Not jokes, not cheap shots, not the usual internet pylon. A genuine, serious look at the numbers, the results, and the reality of his situation. Because here's the thing about Formula One. It is an unforgiving sport. There are only 22 seats available for the best drivers on the planet. And the competition to hold on to one of those seats is absolutely ferocious. Careers get ended, legends get replaced. Young prospects get cut before they ever reach their potential. The sport waits for no one. And yet, as the paddock enters the summer break and the silly season kicks into full swing, one seat appears completely untouchable. Lance Stroll's seat at Aston Martin. That alone is worth talking about. So, let's start with the hard numbers from the 2026 season, because the data doesn't lie, and it doesn't sugarcoat anything. Aston Martin has had a rough year as a team. But for Lance Stroll personally, this season has been something close to a nightmare. 11 races were held before the summer break. In those 11 races, Stroll did not score a single World Championship point. Take a moment with that. His best finish across the entire first half of the year was a 13th place at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and that result only came after Aston Martin bolted a major upgrade package onto the car. Without that intervention, it's hard to know where that result would have landed. Across his whole 2026 campaign, Stroll has only managed to finish inside the top 15 on 2 separate occasions. Every other race has been a combination of backarcher finishes and retirements. It's a brutal scorecard by any standard. Now, fairness matters here. Any honest conversation about Stroll's performance has to account for the car he's been given to work with. The Aston Martin AMR 26 has been a deeply troubled machine from the moment it rolled out of the garage. It started the season significantly overweight, which in Formula One is a serious handicap right out of the gate. On top of that, the car lacked aerodynamic downforce, meaning it simply wasn't generating the grip drivers need to push hard through corners. And then there's the Honda engine issue, which caused severe vibrations throughout the chassis, making the car not just slow, but genuinely painful to drive. That's not a minor footnote. That's a significant factor. The proof that the car itself is the problem. Fernando Alonso, a 2-time world champion with decades of elite-level experience, has also struggled massively behind the wheel of the AMR 26 this year. Alonso has only managed to score a single championship point himself. So, the machinery is clearly letting both drivers down. That context is real and it matters. But here's where the conversation gets complicated, and where Lance Stroll's situation becomes genuinely hard to defend. In Formula One, the car is never your ultimate measuring stick. Your teammate has the exact same chassis, the exact same engine, the exact same tires, the exact same strategy calls. They are the only person in the entire world operating under identical conditions to you. So when you compare teammates head-to-head, you get the clearest possible picture of raw driver performance, stripped of all the excuses. And when you run that comparison between Stroll and Alonso in 2026, the picture that emerges is alarming. In qualifying, which is the single purest measure of a driver's outright pace and ability, Fernando Alonso is beating Lance Stroll by a score of 12-2 across all sessions this season. Read that again. In a sport where being beaten 6-5 by your teammate is considered a rough patch, being beaten 12-2 is a completely different conversation. That's not a slump. That's a pattern. And it's not just the raw win-loss record that raises eyebrows. It's the margin. The average qualifying gap between Alonso and Stroll this season sits at 0.384 seconds in Alonso's favor. In Formula One terms, that is an enormous deficit. We're talking about a sport where thousandths of a second separate the field at the front. Nearly 0.4 of a second per lap is the kind of gap that puts drivers in entirely different performance brackets. It's the kind of margin that on any other team, with any other ownership structure, would have serious consequences for a driver's future. In today's Formula One, where tenths of a second separate entire rows of the grid, a gap of nearly 0.4 between teammates isn't just notable, it's alarming. That kind of margin puts Lance Stroll's deficit to Fernando Alonso among the largest teammate gaps anywhere on the grid this season. The only comparable split right now is the one between Carlos SC and Alex Albon over at Williams. And that situation has its own set of complications. When you're sitting inside a constructor that spent hundreds of millions trying to reach the front, a gap that wide is genuinely hard to explain away. What makes it worse is that the problem isn't purely about raw speed. This isn't just a case of one driver being slightly slower through the corners. The real damage is coming from errors in execution and a pattern of costly, avoidable mistakes. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone made that painfully clear for anyone still giving Stroll the benefit of the doubt. During that race, Stroll collected 3 separate penalties from the stewards in the space of just 9 laps. That's not a rough afternoon. That's a complete breakdown in focus. He racked up 6 individual track limits breaches across the race. And yes, when a driver is wrestling with a difficult car, errors are going to happen occasionally. Every driver on the grid understands that. But 3 penalties inside 9 laps tells a different story. That points to something deeper than a tricky car setup or a difficult circuit layout. That's a concentration issue. And in Formula One, at this level, concentration issues have consequences. Which brings us to what is genuinely the most troubling part of Stroll's 2026 season so far. And honestly, the thing that people in the paddock have been quietly discussing for a while now, his motivation. Watch his post-race interviews. Listen to his team radio during the races. There's a flatness there that's hard to miss. Other drivers on this grid, when things are going wrong, are visibly furious. They're pushing engineers, demanding answers, refusing to accept the situation. Stroll often seems like he's made peace with it before the lap is even finished. He's also been openly critical of the 2026 regulations in a way that's raised a few eyebrows. He's called the current generation of cars sad, and he's complained at length about how heavy and cumbersome they are to pilot around a circuit. Now, plenty of drivers have grumbled about the 2026 rules. That's nothing new. The whole paddock has had opinions. But with Stroll, experienced journalists and veteran observers who have spent decades watching this sport are starting to voice something more specific. There's a growing feeling that his passion for Formula One itself might genuinely be fading. The car is improving, the excuses are disappearing, and the eyes of the entire paddock are watching to see what Lance Stroll does when there's nowhere left to hide. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out any other latest update from this channel. Drop your answers to those 3 questions below. I'm reading every single comment. See you in the next one.